Hey, this is Tiffany Mayer, currently working on a guest bedroom, and I'm going to be doing a custom upholstered headboard with antique nail head trim, and I thought you'd all like to see it. So come on in.
First, we prep the room. Be sure to sweep and dust the room, including your moldings and any architectural details, to be sure that you don't get any dust in your finished paint job. I'm definitely not a professional painter, but my husband and I have done all the painting in our previous homes and have now started working on our newest home. I like to start with trim work. As you can see, I don't have the patience to tape off around casings and base moldings. And in my experience, I always end up pulling the tape off and finding that the paint has leaked under it, and then I have to go back and touch it up anyway. So I prefer to just use a straight brush and a steady hand. For this specific project, I wanted to center the headboard under the window. So my first step is to measure the window width, and then also measure the width of the headboard, and then I'd find my center. For this headboard, I decided to do a shape rather than a straight rectangle. I laid the plywood out and sketched the shape that I wanted on one side. My husband then took the plywood and cut the shape on one side. Once cut, he had an exact template for the other side. All he needed to do was flip it over, trace it, and cut it. Be sure to sand all your cut edges. You don't want to snag your fabric on the plywood when you're putting it all together. I've decided to use a 2-inch thick foam for this headboard. It'll be very comfortable to lean against, and once I add the nail head trim, you'll get a great dimension of depth. Cutting the foam takes a little bit of patience. Because it is a bit thicker, you're going to want to make several passes. Next, lay out the batting, and then layer your foam and then your plywood. The batting is going to hold your foam in place and also be the underlayer to your fabric. I've chosen a cotton all-natural batting, which will add another layer of softness to the finished headboard. You're going to want to trim some of your batting away before you begin stapling. I like to staple my batting about 2 to 3 inches down from the edge of the plywood. Be sure to put your staples a couple of inches apart. This way, there's no movement in the batting. And to trim away any excess. Next, roll out your fabric on a clean surface. Cut your fabric to be 3 or 4 inches bigger than your finished headboard. Pull it as tight as you can and staple about an inch from the edge. And keep those staples an inch or two apart. On the edges, corners, and on the concave curve, pull it down and fold over the fabric so that it has a nice tailored fit look. If you wanted to, you could stop there and just mount hanging hardware on the back of your headboard. But I went a step further and decided to add a decorative nail head trim around the perimeter of the headboard. If you decide to do the nail head trim, there's a few options out there. But I like the look of individual nail heads, so I bought individual packs and hand hammered each nail head in. This obviously took a bit longer, and it was harder to keep the lines straight, but I think in the end, it's a much more custom look. Here are a couple of tips when doing a nail head trim. First and foremost, patience is your greatest ally. Bring it with you. Individual nail head trim can be rough. This project was my first attempt at doing a nail head trim. I've seen it done in the past by professionals, and they make it look extremely easy. The 2-inch thick foam is going to look great with this nail head trim, but you're going to have to hammer through 2-inch thick foam and into the 1/4-inch plywood. As with the painting, I'm not a professional upholsterer either. But here are a few tips that helped me when I started nailing the heads in. Keep the nail head perpendicular to the plywood. And yes, this sounds simple, but when you're trying to hammer through a 2-inch thick foam, the nail head can go askew. This will cause the nail head to break off and you'll have to pull the tip out with pliers. And how do I know this? Maybe because it happened to me about 1,000,000 times. Second, you're going to want to use a rubber mallet to hammer in your nail heads so that you don't damage them. And when hammering, make sure that you hit it straight down. I found it easiest to do one quick hit rather than a bunch of little ones. Third, try to keep your nail heads relatively close together and an equal distance between one another. This is going to be difficult with an individual nail head trim, but try your best. It'll be worth it in the end. Once completed, the nail head trim will give you a depth on your headboard that you didn't have prior. That, combined with the textural difference, really makes this headboard a unique and custom piece.